We're not through yet.
7 days a week.
You'll be amazed at what my Eric XL, even at 8.5 pounds, picked up.
Call us now.
Call us now. Call now, and I'll also send you my Oric compact vacuum absolutely free.
Have your credit card ready.
Hey, hello. Hey, can you hear me? Hey, can you hear me? Hello? Hey.
Welcome to Emerging Tech Mastery, a show that demystifies cutting-edge technology like cryptocurrency, the blockchain, metaverse, NFTs, virtual reality, the maker movement, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud, edge, and even fog computing. Strap in as we ride into the fourth industrial revolution. Emerging Tech Mastery provides actionable knowledge, regardless of skill level, from experts in the trenches. We piece together this intel in easy-to-consume media formats, processes, and procedures. See you in the future.
Hey everybody, Aaron here. Just wanted to give you a little intro before we get into the show itself. This was a hybrid episode where I spoke a little bit in the beginning, and then I invited Eric Azares, who was on that last episode with VR, to come on since he was nice enough to invite me to NAB. And also I wanted to point out that NAB was a little bit of a milestone because I actually made a point to sort of soft launch the show before we left, which basically meant I submitted it to Apple Podcasts, who I'm still waiting to hear from. I thought that was kind of a cool, milestone, and hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Emerging Tech Mastery. I am your host, Aaron Mungle, and this is another solo episode. And today's episode is going to be all about NAB 2023, also known as the National Association of Broadcasters. Yes, this is the mecca for all things media, technology, production, software, audio, video, everything in between. I've been a media producer and creator for quite a long time, and many of you might actually be the same thing, whether you realize it or not. With social media, that actually was a whole new era of people having a media production. Back in the day, right, you had to have all these different tools to do media. Like, you had to be like a studio, and you had all this tech. Well, now with social media, we've all kind of gotten a little piece of that, and it kind of hit me, wow, man, people take media super seriously as far as if you're a media studio and if you're in the industry and if you're making the technology, like there's insanely serious use cases. And I think being somewhat of an amateur media person, granted, yes, I'm a marketer and a tech writer and technical writer, and I do all these sort of content-based things, but it's just so different when you see the whole industry around media and technology. So I really just wanted to share what it was like, my first impressions as a noob, some insights, reflections, takeaways, maybe some tips on how to do a conference as a new person, because this is a situation I keep finding myself in again and again, and then some shout outs to some awesome people I met, including someone who invited me to it, who you've actually heard from before, so we'll get into it. So like I said, the media industry is insanely wealthy, frankly. I mean, there's some really big businesses and empires that have been built. They celebrated their 100-year anniversary of the event, and it kind of makes you realize, how long this stuff's been going on, right? I think we can all remember TV and radio even, and there's been people that have been at this for such a long time, so I guess I felt a little humbled, like, wow, there's a real industry here that's been built for a very long time. And so let me just give you some of my quick first impressions. Like I said, super wealthy, super developed, super mature, very focused on money. And I did talk to some colleagues that were there, and they were, seasoned people. seasoned veterans will say in this industry, and they basically said it has nothing to do with creativity. It has everything to do with making money as far as the industry itself, which I thought was so interesting because the whole nature of using these tools as a content creator, now we have influencers and everyone's like their own little mini media studio, right? So I thought it was so interesting to see that spectrum of size in the industry. Like you have people that are small players, like I'm doing a little podcast here and I have, some pretty modest tech, to be frank, and a lot of other people are like that as well. And then you have people that have $3 million tech, $10 million tech, maybe like hundreds of millions of dollars of technology spread across their different media empires or, facilities, we'll say. So, that was something really that struck me, is like, this thing is pretty big, pretty developed. The other side of it is it's actually a really kind of lively industry in many ways, because the nature of media is creating new and cooler things and better resolutions and adding augmented reality to a TV broadcast and adding, all these cool things. Virtual production, that's a new way of filming where there's a screen behind you and you basically have this screen behind you that can be changed, and then the camera films you, and then there's a screen behind you, and you basically end up being in a movie when the scene was not filmed on site somewhere on planet Earth. It was actually a screen of the Midwest or the Wild West scene. You see what I'm saying? So there's all these new tools and toys that people are using, and it's just cool. I've been in software for a while, marketing different IT and software, and media's lively. I really enjoyed that part of it. It was so cool to see all the eye candy, frankly, but then there was all the tech behind it, and like, what's this, what's that, and frankly, a lot of these things will require their own episodes and discussion and more sort of structured discussion about it. But I do like just sort of pointing out what I've seen. So that, I think, is a pretty good sort of take on reflections and insights. I think a couple other insights are the industry is very tight-knit, despite it being, pretty big and pretty wealthy. It's not like there's so many endless players. You have sort of this consolidation of players that get bought by others or don't make it, and then people kind of get recycled in the industry, so to speak, in different niches within the big niche. So that was really cool. I think another takeaway would be that, again, it's not something as independent focused. Like if you're coming in as a startup or some kind of independent creation, I don't feel like this is as much the one-man band vibe, and I've seen that in other niches where you can do that. So it's kind of neat where you sort of need a team and multiple people involved. Even if you are sort of the one-man band, likely there are other players. Let me give you an example. You have audio engineers or video editors or other players in the processing of this higher level media. Again, I'm pretty lean with what I do. I pretty much cut my teeth on podcasts, let's say, 15, 16. So I did work with some people early on, and then I kind of was able to do my own thing. So I guess this whole thing got me super reflecting on, well, what's my media game and what am I doing and what toys am I using? And I will admit there was a little bit of a feeling like, oh, I'm just using this really basic, simple stuff and I should have more advanced stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's not what we are all about here at ETM. We are all about tech for everyone, high tech, low tech, no tech. So, I'm willing to sort of entertain and appreciate the sort of $3 million device, but I am just as excited, if not more excited, about a $30 Raspberry Pi. I know they're more expensive now. You could do a podcast on, because I'm thinking about the rest of the world. I'm not just thinking about the West and like, great, we've got $1 million of budgets and like tech that we can buy. So I felt very kind of polarized. Like, you know what? I am going to take a stand and I am going to say that it's okay to not have all this amazing, crazy, insane tech, because guess what? If you want to do what those people are doing, you can do it with far less advanced tech if you're willing to be resourceful and scrappy. Now that should almost be its own episode, and I'll get into that. I don't probably want to get into it now, but I think you're picking up on what I'm saying. You don't need all that. With that said, I do like seeing what they're doing to understand what it looks like at this higher level, right? So it kind of gives me a little bit of motivation, inspiration of what a real media studio production empire, if you will, looks like. So I want to just talk really quick about how do you place yourself at one of these new conferences, or how do you, it sounds kind of silly, right? Like, how do you go to a conference, or how do you, maybe the best way to put it is, how do you break into a new niche when you're new and don't know anyone and are just kind of coming at it cold? So I wanted to mention that first off, you need to get a ticket to the event. So this event was actually free, so anyone could have gone, but will anyone go? Probably not. So I would say step one, if it's free, get a ticket. I know that sounds a little overly simplistic, but the second part to it is networking. Now, I did have Eric Azares. I'm going to dox him, but yes, he invited me to this event. You guys have heard him on the show. And that was really awesome because I got to meet some of his colleagues, and they were super in the know about the industry. They had worked in other companies in the space and like even had other startups. So I just felt like I was in really good hands this time. But most of the time I am completely on my own. And so I get it. So I would just say, if you are by yourself, I'm not as much the initiator with the networking, but now that I've gone around the block a few times, I would say if you're new, one thing you can do, go look on Twitter, go look on YouTube, see who's posting content. Now, I also happen to get a press pass because, well, I do the media thing and content, all that, right? They got ETM here. And so that was another cool way to get a little bit of an insider vibe because people are sending you their press releases. There's this whole media room when you're there, so you kind of get a place to settle and stuff. I know not everyone that's listening to this might be media, but you could totally build up to that. Even a very like modest blog, frankly, could probably, fit the bill, right? If you're willing to sort of put stuff out there and say that you cover events, you can pretty easily get probably approved. Maybe not super high level conferences, but definitely something like this where it was already free. They were probably not having any problem with giving passes out. So I did like that, and it kind of gives you a little more intel on what's going on, even stuff that my colleagues didn't really have as much info on because they weren't getting press releases. Granted, yeah, maybe most of them aren't super useful and nothing really earth-shattering, but it's really a cool way to kind of see, how does the industry talk? How do they communicate? What words do they use? What do they say? What do they do? Who are the players? Who are the PR companies, right? So these are all things that I think are really cool to know as a newcomer. Now, let's say you're just getting the regular ticket, general admission, you're not going to do any of the media thing. All right, no problem. What I would say then is back to what I said. Go on social media, see who's doing what, who's saying what. Often people will say, we're going to be at NAB 2023, or, come see us, come talk to us. And you know what? If you can just get a little bit out of your comfort zone, which I'm not very good at often, and I'm getting better at it, but if you can do that, it's really not that bad. It's actually pretty cool. And look, some connections might stick, might not. There is a little bit of I don't want to say pressure, but sort of it's kind of on you to like initiate and follow up afterwards. So be sure to do that if you can. But all those things do help. Again, those are things that I have not always done. I kind of like to just freestyle it and do what I want. And maybe I don't do any of that. But I'm giving you sort of like all the insights and wisdom if you want to kind of have that. All right, let's bring Eric into the conversation. Well, hey, Eric, thanks for jumping back on. And you were there at NAB. Appreciate the invitation. And first off, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. NAB was a blast. It's always fun to be in town. And when I say in town, Las Vegas, great place, great convention hall, a lot of great energy. Now, I have a confession, Aaron. I don't think I need to drink coffee anymore in the morning. Like I used to have like this big cup of espresso. I guess you're not supposed to have like a big cup of espresso, right? That's like the extra strong stuff. But yeah. And I guess the reason is because I'm just so energized from the show, like just being out there and seeing all the people out there. Like it kind of like gave me a turbocharge of enthusiasm, like seeing other like-minded people at NAB, lots of exciting stuff happening. Like I don't know, like the energy kind of carried over to even after I got home and returned home from NAB. So man, I am just bouncing off the walls here. I'm just really excited. So yeah, I'm really glad to be here. That's what I'm saying.
Nice. Well, I appreciate, I don't think that's always people's response or reaction or sort of like story about Vegas, right? A lot of people, there's the partying and drinking or whatever, and they kind of are like run down and sort of tired or like worn out. But I like what you're saying. And I think that is a testament to meeting people, seeing the industry, seeing the event, seeing like other people. And I do think, the world's kind of gotten a little crazy last couple of years. So I think I've even noticed there's a little bit of a sense of like warming back up with these social engagements, not only me personally, like getting in the groove of going and traveling and going here, going there. Yeah, so tell me about what was NAB 2023, and that would be the National Association of Broadcasters.
Yeah, so it was a 3 or 4 day. It's funny, they actually started on the weekend this year, so it kind of threw off my schedule a little bit. But yeah, NAB, fantastic. It's the National Association of Broadcasters, and one thing that you observed is that on the logo it said, what did it say? Like 100 years, celebrating 100 years, and that's crazy in my mind because 100 years ago was like the 1920s, right? And a couple of folks we were talking with, they were some of the regulars that go every year or every other year. They were just telling us that how much the show has evolved and changed with the times. I think in 1920, now they weren't there for the 1920s, the folks that we were chatting with at the NAB floor, but just to kind of recap, they it started out as like broadcasting, like we're talking like radio broadcasting, right? Because that's what they had in the 20s, and then it evolved into film and television. So the medium has evolved, right, from just sound to visual, and then flash forward to I guess the early 2000s, and it really started to embrace not just film and cinema, but and when you think film and cinema, you think of those old school Hollywood, like those big cans of like physical film, and you think of satellite trucks and this and that. Now they've been embracing digital, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because everything's computerized, and that's definitely something that was reflected this year. So it was not because when you hear the words National Association of Broadcasters, you think, okay, this is just television, this is just cameras, but it was more than that. It was remember there were all sorts of like everything from A to Z, everything from start to finish in the whole production pipeline, everything from cameras to production hardware to motorized gimbals and cranes and wheeled carts and um, lenses, virtual production sets to cloud storage, right? Because where are you gonna save all these digital video files, right? And services. So it was really great. It was like going to a tech show in a way. It was like a combination of tech and video production. It seemed like.
Yeah, I like how you kind of laid out, sort of your reaction to it, because you're right. Broadcasting, I actually called it media in how I was mentioning it, but it's the same idea. And I was
Yeah,
saying,
media, mass media.
look
You're right.
look at all this technology behind this industry. So
Yeah.
I think there is definitely a gamut, and you're right about digital is being embraced. I also got the sense that quietly, without saying it, like I think certainly big corporations, if you will, had like the main stage, like Sony and like
Mm-hmm.
Canon, they have the big booths. But look at Rode's booth, RODE. Man, I talked to this guy for a solid 30 to 40 minutes about their mixer, and I was like, wow, this is 100% because of basically like podcasting and audio and
Mm.
maybe the YouTube revolution all combined. But I really noticed that there is a catering to
Mhm.
this new generation, let's call it. We're right here. That's us too, by the way. So
Right.
I was kind of stoked to like respect, okay, here's big corporate media, pretty much, hey, you could even argue new media, social media, podcasting came
Yes.
from radio and TV. So I kind of felt not even like, people kind of hate on the media. I actually felt kind of like a respect, like we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and all that
Uh-huh.
knowledge is now giving us these very interesting tools and venues and opportunities to be also broadcasters. Hey, how fun is that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, for sure. Definitely the barrier to entry has lowered. So you don't need to necessarily have access to a professional studio. You can go to Best Buy or just order even a kit off of Amazon, right? You can have your own podcast starter kit, or if you want to be a video influencer on YouTube or a social media influencer, there's all sorts of hardware that you can buy that's not going to break the bank, right? For under $100, you can get started right now, which is pretty freaking amazing. And with social media, you you can gather an audience, develop a following, and you can basically amplify your voice, right? You have a big megaphone called social media to reach other people. So it's definitely changed. The landscape has definitely changed. Um, yeah.
So, what would you say are some insights and takeaways from the event? I mean, I know we talked about a lot of things, frankly, even when we were there, but I guess maybe there's been a little bit of time for stuff to like simmer and
Yeah.
settle in. So, maybe what has stood out thus far?
Yeah. For me, being, me, because I am into new media, new technology, new immersive technology. I kind of carved out my own little pathway when I was making my ways around the halls. There were what, 4 halls? There was like West Hall, Central Hall, North Hall. So yeah, so a lot of the booths that I hit up were centered around new technology or virtual production and motion capture, that type of thing. And I guess in general, the big takeaway was virtual production and even a little bit of AI, right? And AI, of course, is a big hot button topic nowadays, or it's a very popular topic nowadays. And yeah, there was some AI. There's definitely some artificial intelligence, and it was pretty neat just walking around. Now, virtual production. Did you remember any of the virtual production type of experiences or demos?
Oh man, we got to bring up
Hyper RPG, right? Yeah,
hyper RPG. Yeah, and we got some good media there, so that's a good mention
yeah.
that we can
So
actually show something that we showed since everyone's listening now. But definitely check the show notes because we're gonna have a cool video that we're gonna talk about.
yeah. So their booth was in conjunction with Mo Sys. Mo Sys was the company behind the virtual production hardware, I believe. So all the motors and camera systems, and I believe that they offer a course where you can learn how to use the Mo Sys. Uh, how to, you They offer a course where you can learn how to use the Mo Sys suite of products, and I believe the folks over at Hype RPG they went through that course, and because they're the creative team. So Hyper RPG, they're the creative team, and I believe Mo Sys, they're the hardware providers, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Uh,
But back to what you said, I mean, they had
yeah.
an incredible virtual production. It's funny you're bringing that up because I also had a little spiel on it, but it was, I mean, good Lord, you really prove the idea, right? So what was you did mention virtual production, but I guess what's your take on like what was new from, because you have mentioned it before, but we clearly saw
Yeah.
new things is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the idea of virtual production has been around for a while. I'm not sure how many years, but if you think green screens, right? I guess that's kind of maybe the early days of going towards virtual production. But nowadays, you have big LED walls, so that means that there's this big video wall behind the actor. Yeah. So with virtual production, instead of acting in front of a green screen and imagining, oh, there's a big dragon breathing fire, and now you're scared, now you're running away, right? Instead of acting blindfolded in a way, you are acting in front of a big a big LED display, right? So you can actually see the dragon breathing fire. And what ends up happening is you get a more genuine performance from the actor. What they did was, what they've been doing is combining both digital and physical. And we saw that in numerous booths. Now, specifically in the Mo Sys slash Hyper RPG booth, they had a combination of an LED wall. So the idea was, okay, you step right up, you step up to the booth, and the fellow, you step right up to the booth. And what was really cool is that they gave a live demonstration of the system's capabilities. So they came up with this fun scenario specifically for NAB, where you are in this Indiana Jones type of scenario where you're a treasure hunter, you're looking for this magical box. And there's this famous scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where the golden idol is on this pedestal in some jungle ruins, right? So what they did was they created this pedestal, a physical pedestal with this mysterious box, and you would walk up onto that pedestal, and it's on this motorized, like, lazy Susan type of disc shaped platform, and behind you is this LED wall, and the LED wall has the jungle ruins scene, and there are also an assortment of lights that you can control from a control panel. So you could change the color temperature, you can make it from orange, or you can even change it to blue, or maybe it's a moonlight type of ambiance, and you could even dynamically change the background. If you remember, he was asking, okay, do you want it to be nighttime? Do you want this to be morning? Right? And because that would change the lighting of the scene, depending on if it's depending on the position of the sun. Is it morning light? Is it high noon? Is it nighttime? Is there thunder and lightning? And then another feature that you can adjust was the style. Was it this detective noir mystery type of atmosphere? Is it black and white, right? Or is it this kind of throwback 80s VHS type of style? Or is it a modern action flick? And I think they even had some type of like psychedelic effect as well, if you remember that one.
Yep.
So what they were demonstrating is that you could dynamically change the scene, all the elements that you could adjust all the different sliders. And of course, if you change the different elements of the scene, you change the tone, the mood of the situation. I think when I did my take, I was going for this, this adventurer, Nathan Drake, Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones type of feel. You were going for this comedic Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure stoner comedy type of approach. And so it was really cool just seeing that in action, how those creative decisions can be made on the fly and adjusted. So when what I did was, I stepped on the state onto the platform, and the platform was motorized, so it was rotating. So as the camera was as the platform was rotating, the scene behind me was also rotating in correspondence with the movement. And then the camera operator was slowly dollying in, and it was great. It was just a mismatch. It was a combination of virtual production, changing the digital elements, and then combining that with a physical set. Right. So the set pieces of the box was real, the pedestal was real, and yeah, it was unreal. To be honest, it was literally unreal. They used the Unreal Engine to power this, and we were able to see the results like instantly, which is amazing because like you don't have to like wait hours for rendering or waiting for the editing department to cut something together, or the special effects department to put in crazy hours to see the results, only to just be like, no, actually, I don't like it that much. Can we make some adjustments? Then you do it again, right? So the whole production cycle is accelerated, and that is just amazing. What did you think?
I'm glad you brought up the control of, or like changing the scene, because it kind of proves that, virtual production is such a portal into like possibilities, right? Like you can literally take an idea and, I think one of the other themes that we discussed was the speed and the reduction in production team labor, which on the one hand might seem a little scary to some people, but it actually is amazing and awesome because, yes, there might be a little bit of fallout with, okay, less labor, so maybe less people doing that work. But what I see happening is that you can just move so much quicker. And again, I'm kind of opening a new thread here, but like this brings up how heavy duty on infrastructure, travel, cost of a team, right? It used to be. And so this to me is highlighting a new way of doing things, right?
That's exactly right, because you're still going to need creatives. You're still going to need people that are operating cameras and doing this and that and editing, but it really accelerates and streamlines that whole process, right? Because you're not bogged down with long production cycles. You're not bogged down with having to deal with the old ways of editing and production. It's really having everything digitized really accelerates things. And yeah, to your point about production and travel, right? What was interesting is that if it's all digital, sometimes this is crazy. So like I know a lot of people that have worked in the production industry, and this one guy I met, and there's a point to the story, I promise. There's one guy I met. He was like, he was on he was on location working for this one film project. I think they were in Australia, and and we were talking. It's like, oh man, yeah. So I've got to. I've got to work 14 hours, 14-hour days. I don't get to see my family, and now I got to work like 14-hour days. And I was like, oh man, I'm sorry. No, he's like, no, that's good. I usually work like 17-hour days. I'm cutting down to 14-hour days. Like, holy crap, man! Like, so the production industry is just so. This one guy I met, he worked for production for a sporting arena, and he was there. I think he started when he was right out of college, and he was working for this one stadium in production, this sporting arena, this sports stadium on the East Coast, and he was there for about 14 months, and which is, I guess he considered that a long time, because the turnaround for the personnel there was just like every couple of months someone would either leave, or they would just leave, right? Because it was just too brutal. And and he would say, oh yeah, every time like somebody joined the team and they had a girlfriend or boyfriend or a wife, it was only a matter of like 2 months before they'd either break up or get divorced, or they would just quit because it was just too strenuous, right? Because it was so demanding. Now, with virtual production and these new tools, like you don't have to, it takes away, it removes that time, right? And you get that time back, right? So just from like a mental health and like work life balance perspective, like it definitely accelerates that process, and it's definitely beneficial for the folks involved. Also, if you're working if you're working virtually, maybe you don't have to spend 14 months in Australia the whole time, right? You could shoot while you're there, and then you could do some of the editing and processing or whatever um, from the comfort of your home. All you need is an internet connection, right? So it definitely removes a lot of that burden, a lot of that stress from life, from work, and it's that work life balance. So I mean, so yes, it reduces costs, it accelerates the production cycle, but it's also good for the employees. That's what I'm gathering. So
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about how production really is. And you bring up a great point, which is that media and sort of everything TV and like movies and all these like sports entertainment, great point,
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
a lot of work to maintain. And so you're bringing up really interesting points there, because if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, I've heard that TV studios are struggling, and so they've compressed their teams. So you're almost making me think that there's a very needed, frankly, like relief,
Mm.
because the workflows, to use a fancy term of the industry I just learned, it's so much, because video is taxing. And see, that's why I've kind of, when I cut my teeth on podcasting, and we actually, I'll admit it, super overlooked video, which is insane, because if more people did that, you wouldn't have this whole industry. But it really got me to now have my head explode when I realized all the work that goes into media. And I'll admit, there was a part of
Yeah.
me that was like, oh man, these guys are like such a wealthy industry, and like everyone's got all this work and knows what they need to do. And then I'm now kind of, wait a minute, let's compare that with like the reality. The reality is, it's insane, right? The
Yeah.
workloads. And it's like, yeah, if you're in that job, like, you may even caution someone like me that's kind of like, well, you haven't even figured out how to work like this, or you don't work like that. And so I kind of now am looking at it from the angle of like, there's this term, Tim Ferriss with his 4-hour work week probably popularized this concept, but lifestyle business, right?
Mhm.
Which might be a little bit of an illusion with social media, right? Where people are, I'm in Maui and I'm taking a selfie, and all I did was do a review for this hotel and like give them a shout out on my Instagram. But wait a
Yeah.
minute, what did we just talk about? Media's work. They have to maintain their following and their pane of glass
Mhm.
from social media. So even today, I would argue, yeah, it's a bit of a lifestyle business because of these tools. But guess what? That same pattern could totally play out. So I'm just kind of drawing some interesting, I guess, themes here, which is that media is work. And even if you're doing it yourself and have your own brand, you're an influencer. Well,
Yeah.
now you have to do everything, literally
Right.
everything. So think about like these organizations we saw with huge teams. And
Right.
now that's like one person as these very small outfits,
Yeah.
which is just crazy, right?
Yeah, you become a one-person production team if you're a social media influencer. Well, we really should interview. I would love to interview a social media influencer one day, just to kind of dispel some of the myths about it, because uh, you know how it is that you see all the glamorous lifestyles on Instagram, right? And sometimes it's like that, right? But you don't see like the 98% of the other, or you don't see the 98% of how they spend the rest of their days, right? Maybe they are grinding, right? They're editing and doing this and that and shooting and flying all, so it is tough. And that's the part you don't always see. You only see the results, right? Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts behind the scenes. And luckily nowadays, it's getting easier to get in. It's getting easier to get into that space. So
Yeah, I mean, was there any other, I guess, takeaways before we go into sort of like maybe some tips on the on how to kind of go to a conference, and then we definitely need to talk about volumetric
yeah,
and
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, there's a couple other companies I kind of want to highlight here. So there was Mo Sys slash HYPERPG, and then there was this company called Magic Box. They were the virtual production truck. With Magic Box, it is a virtual production truck on wheels, right? So instead of having a studio in just kind of anchored, instead of having a studio that's anchored in one place, the Magic Box virtual production truck can go to your actors. Instead of having your actors go to a studio, it comes to you, and they can fashion it out to become a set, whatever you want it to be. And when we walked in, there was a scene set up where it was like a train, kind of like an Amtrak style train, and you had physical seats, physical tables. You're sitting down, and you had windows to look out, and you had windows to look out of. But the scene, as you're looking out, the scene moving past you wasn't really, you weren't really moving. It was a video wall that was showing a scene kind of whizzing by you, right? I think we were like in a forest, then we went into a city, and so that was great. I thought it was a really neat concept. Again, just trying to kind of streamline the whole production cycle, right? So again, I guess their whole thing is, well, you don't have to come to us, we come to you, right? Um, so that kind of takes some of the logistics out of getting a whole crew, to go to some other place, right, to some other studio. So, and I'm told that the traffic in LA is notoriously bad. I'm sure there's a comedian or two that's probably made a comment about the 405, right? So, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
So, well, what is it like if you want to go travel 1 mile? It takes at least 2 hours, something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then the other virtual production company that I want to highlight is called Disguise, and it was really neat. So, and you were here for that one. So basically, it's another LED wall, but it's a combination of multiple technologies. So it's like the LED walls we're talking about in virtual production, but in addition to that, it uses markerless body tracking. So what the heck does that mean? So if you ever seen those motion capture suits, right? If you ever seen like behind the scenes of making a movie, they wear those black outfits with the white ping pong balls on it, right? And you're doing the motion capture, and you're
Mm-hmm.
usually doing that because like maybe you're performing as Gollum, or you're performing as some alien creature for some like production, or some animated creature. With markerless body tracking, you can actually make a performance without wearing the special suit. So what I did was, for their demonstration, I walked up on stage and I didn't have to put on any special equipment, right? So I can just walk up there in my plain clothes and give a performance. So what they did was, they in the background they had this speedway, like it's Formula One, and I was actually a race car driver. So there was a 3D digital avatar of a race car driver. So as I walked around the stage, the 3D avatar would walk around. If I moved my arm, it would move. It would also move its arm. So this was all happening in real time. So it was really neat seeing how it was combining two concepts: the concepts of virtual production and body tracking, and it's using using AI and machine learning, right, to track your body. So it's pretty neat seeing that those two worlds come together. Yeah, do you remember that? I think you actually recorded
Oh yeah.
doing that, right? Yeah,
Definitely have some video of that.
yeah. And what was
for
okay? So
sure.
after that, after I went on stage, I don't know what I did. I probably just awkwardly like did a little dance. Like after I stepped off stage, like the two people behind me, like they were like, "Oh yeah, here's my time to shine." Like one guy started to break dance. He started like spinning on his head and doing like windmills and
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So which is amazing, because that just shows you the power of markerless body tracking. Because if you're wearing the special suit, you're a little bit more restricted, right? You can't spin around and jump around and do backflips uh, like you normally would, because you're wearing a special suit. You don't want to damage it. But when you're using um, when you're using this system, you could just go in your plain clothes and move naturally and give a natural, genuine performance. So that was really powerful, and that was an easy detail to miss. If yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
that was amazing. So it was a combination of markerless body tracking and virtual production. So I wanted to highlight those two other companies as well, because those kind of fit the theme we were talking about kind of accelerating the creative process, and yeah, making fun decisions on the fly. So
Yeah, and there's one other concept that I'll bring up, and I don't know if you saw this, but so Sony had this augmented reality, we'll call it a scene, or an scene. They basically were able to superimpose like a bar and then like a bottle of, it was like I think a bottle of whiskey or something, and the people that were sitting there standing on the stage were that's all that was in the shot. there was no like props. So like to your point about wearing a mocap suit or whatever, well now there's like this whole prop thing that's kind of being, I guess you could say, removed, or maybe an alternative if you don't have the props available. So literally they're just superimposing media on a broadcast, which is, I suppose, kind of like virtual production in its own
Yeah.
way, but it's like from the like graphics and sort of VR, AR, right? We've talked about that before. You're literally superimposing a graphic versus like there's a real screen with the picture that you're filming. So
Right.
that to me is kind of like the screen is sort of like the tech, but then there's superimposing stuff without any backdrop or like on top of the backdrop, which is kind of a whole nother angle to what we're talking about.
Right.
So just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's another detail that maybe some people may miss, because when we were talking about superimposing things that are not there in the room, like for example, there was that I believe there was like a newscaster, or there was somebody giving a demonstration, and there was a table in front of her, and right, do you remember this? I think it was at the Sony booth,
Mm-hmm.
and on the table it was empty, right? It was just an empty table. But if you look through the screen, they digitally added a wine bottle, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and the camera was moving and doing all sorts of dynamic movements. So that actually that's actually pretty crafty, because when we digitally insert something, you can't just slap it on, onto the video. And while the camera is in motion, also it'll look fake, right? It'll break the illusion. But these systems are smart enough to say, hey, okay, we're going to place that wine bottle on the table, and it will convincingly look like it's actually occupying that physical space, because as the camera moves around, the angle of the bottle moves around as if it's actually in the room with her, right? And also let's also talk about reflections as well, right? Because that bottle, I believe it was like transparent, and it was also reflecting light, right? If it was in a green screen, like you would get that green screen like bleed, right? Or you would get some of that green coming off the green curtains, right, on the wine bottle. Then some poor artist would have to digitally paint that out. But if it's an LED wall, you get the natural ambiance, the natural reflections coming from that room, because that lighting is actually in camera, right? It's actually there during the time of the recording, or the time of the stream, quote unquote. It's not added in post. So yeah, so that's another little detail that makes it really more convincing. And again, hey, it's maybe you don't like wine, maybe you're a beer person, right? So it can digitally change that item. Or maybe you don't like beer at all, maybe you want there to be a vase of flowers there, or whatever. Or maybe it's regionalized, right? Maybe that broadcast is happening in Spain, and you want to have a product that is from that local market, so it's regionalized, right? So having those 3D digital assets to kind of swap in and out, I mean, that also accelerates the whole process. So yeah, so
I like that you went into like the answer to the question, what would this be used for, which is literally like you're saying, marketing, or like this team and that team, regional comment makes so much sense. I would even say like within regional, right? It's like products, services. Oh wait, weather. Like there could be so many uses for that. So I think that's a pretty interesting discussion there. And then one other point comment is like when we're doing these like avatar creations, right? Like specifically disguise, you're also sort of creating, I know we're not talking about 3D scanning necessarily, but as we've learned, and maybe this is a good segue into volumetric, is well, now you have this sort of I'm going to make up a word here, avatarization of us and humans. So I
right,
see the blending of media and gaming, frankly. And what I mean is really games are in a graphics engine, media is footage from a camera. Those things
right.
are being combined, which is really nuts.
Yeah, it is really nuts. And and we're just going to see more of a convergence of the two worlds colliding. We won't know what's real and what's fake anymore. It's going to get to that point. I mean, right now, I think with the naked eye, we could kind of, we could sense if something is off or something is digitized or not. But hey, things are getting super realistic nowadays. With 3D scanning, photogrammetry, there was over at Sony, they had a photogrammetry booth. There was a company, we interviewed him. I believe his name was Michael.
Yep.
Yeah, so there was a photogrammetry booth, and basically you would stand on this platform, and you're surrounded by dozens, I think hundreds of cameras pointing at you, and they're all digitizing you, avatarizing you, right? And then the idea is they would scan you, and then you can bring your 3D scan into a gaming engine. You can rig it with bones, and what that does is it allows them to animate you, right? And puppet you around, and you become a 3D avatar, right? So, which you could use in a video game, you could use it maybe in an online metaverse, you can use it in special effects. So, so I thought that was pretty neat. The digitization. There were a couple other companies. There was IO Industries. They were there. They're the hardware solution for many of the volumetric stages around the world, specifically the Microsoft powered volumetric stages. There are several stages all around the world, including some in Canada. There's the Departure Lounge. There's Avatar Dimension in Northern Virginia. There is Metastage located in LA. So we had a good chat with IO Industries. We talked with Andrew. You remember our friend Andrew from IO? Yeah, and one like recent example was there was a film about Whitney Houston, and what he was talking about was how they needed to create a digital crowd because Whitney Houston, the actress portraying Whitney Houston, was performing on stage. They were recreating this concert venue, and they needed people. They needed a convincing way to portray people applauding and singing along, right? So they captured real people in these volumetric stages, and then they basically copied and pasted them into the arena, but they did it in such a way where it looked natural. And it was, and if you didn't know, like, you wouldn't even notice if you didn't know. So that's how convincing it was. So yeah, we're seeing volumetric done in gaming, and we're seeing it done even on high quality projects for Hollywood. So we're definitely going to see a lot more of that, I think.
So before we get into, you guys are cooking up a pretty cool little association around volumetric. It proves how early it is, and I'm kind of giving away the answer here. But how early is the industry, or where is the industry at? Because it's kind of a niche within a niche as far as media and tech.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea of digitizing the real world has been around for a very long time, right? Even during the times of science fiction, and even in recent years with just LiDAR scanning and photogrammetry, or maybe you've seen 3D street views on Google Maps and that type of thing. Or maybe there was that old game, LA Noir, where they digitally scanned the characters. Or actually, if you watch, if you play any modern video game, um, they digitize real actors, right, to get their likeness, right? Or yeah, so the idea of volumetric has been or the idea of digitizing or avatarizing real humans has been around for a while, but now I think it's really gaining momentum because we're seeing it. We're seeing it now. Like, if you remember the Canon booth, Canon has a volumetric system set up in two NBA stadiums, one for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the other for the Brooklyn Nets. And they have their system. They have hundreds of cameras around the arena, and they're all recording simultaneously, and they're video recording the action. and they've done a couple of projects where they would record the entire game, or they would create highlights in volumetric. Did you get a chance to see that in the VR headset at all, or?
I did actually. Yeah, that was really neat for sure. Because it's kind of like you could just do VR and maybe in a game where you're like fighting zombies or something. I definitely like
Yeah,
Brookhaven experiment. I had a zombie like run at me and I definitely fell to the ground the first time because that was
yeah.
crazy. Because also you're in a shooting game, it's dark, all that. So I was a little bit ready for this, but I could see that happening with people like, oh shit, I'm about to get run over by a basketball player. Um,
Right, yeah.
I was in a little
So
booth, so I was aware of my space. That would be embarrassing. You like fall on the guy, but no, it was very like I could see people that are not sort of what's the word I'm looking for seasoned could
yeah,
kind of like you're talking about the plank thing in the previous episode. I could see it being like I mean, it's pretty visceral, right? Like they're definitely running at
yeah.
you. Yeah, the people could say the sort of the graphics, if you will, are not
Mhm.
super advanced yet, but I still felt like, regardless, like viscerally, as far as like a VR, using that as sort of a metric, yeah, like it's
Yeah.
pretty good, pretty intense.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's interesting the state of where things are, because it has advanced, but it's also at the beginning at the same time. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron. It sounds like a paradox, right? Because it has advanced, it has made leaps and bounds as far as what's possible for digitizing real performances, digitizing real humans, but it also has room for improvement, right? Because the quality it isn't like 4K or 8K, right? Crystal clear. Like we can't see like the beads of sweat running down their faces, or every individual pore on their skin yet, right? We can't do that yet, but I think it's only a matter of time where the technology gets better, the systems, the camera systems, and the 3D reconstructions are just going to get better. So it's a very exciting time. So yeah. So what is cool is that this whole notion of volumetric it's an ongoing experiment, and it's happening. It's like a live experiment happening right now, and the folks that are a part of this association called the Volumetric Format Association, they're all collaborating and they're trying to make that future happen, right? So like this all sounds like futuristic stuff, but the good news is you don't have to wait until the future. You can actually get involved now. This is where I put in my little plug for the Volumetric
Well,
Format.
I like that transition actually, and I
Yeah,
meant to ask
yeah.
you about a little bit about just sort of like yeah, like what is it? What's the purpose behind it? And also, I wanted to point out I've very rarely or almost never been a part of like a new trade association forming. I think there was one called the Word of Mouth Marketing
Mhm.
Association. I'm not joking. Like maybe like 10, 12 years ago, I
Yeah.
remember the Word of Mouth Association being formed. And I kind of like was interested and I was sort of new out there. So I was kind of like I guess I didn't really know how to engage with them, but I remember, they were putting
Mhm.
it together and then it kind of became kind of big. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about what it is and the purpose because I think you're kind of getting a front row seat in the formation of this because this is so early,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the purpose of the association, the official unofficial purpose, is to promote companies in the volumetric industry, right? Build out the volumetric ecosystem, and then develop standards, interoperability standards, and grow a community of creators across the globe. So let's break down what that means. So promote companies in the volumetric industry. So companies that are um, part of some type of vertical in the volumetric process. So that can be capture. So that can be the cameras that are involved. There's red digital cinema. It could be the lenses themselves. It could be cameras like Canon. They provide cameras, right? Then there could be the creative houses, the ones that are creating the content, right? Maybe there's a creative agency that um, that comes up with fun concepts with actors, right? so they provide, there's the content providers, there's the capture technology, there's the streaming technology, there's the folks that are involved with the hardware, maybe it's the GPU developers like NVIDIA, right? Um, yeah. So, and then there's the playback, right? So being able to play back the volumetric in VR, or maybe on your desktop, or maybe on your iPad, right? So there's all sorts of moving pieces involved in volumetric, right? And very rarely does one company do everything from start to finish, right? There's always a collaboration between companies that are involved, right? So the idea is to promote these companies and then develop standards. So all the pieces, when it's time to hand off the video files to from one company to the other, right? Maybe you want to be able to stream a capture. Maybe you're in a studio and you want to store the file somewhere, or you want to stream it and play back on an iPad or an Android, right? You want there to be a standardization so everything plays nicely. Otherwise, you might end up in a format war, or maybe there will be everyone's going to have their own individual technology that's not compatible with other technologies, and then when there's conflicts like that, that actually hurts everybody, right? Of course, yeah, there's competition, but if there's too much of it, it could actually confuse the consumer, right? If they're not even sure, like, what the heck, oh, do I need to do this, or do I need to download that, or right? So for the consumer, it's bad. It could be negative. It could also be negative for the people involved, for the folks that are part of the whole pipeline, because if the volumetric capture is from one company is created and then it's not compatible with the other one, oh well, I have to create this other engine to make sure it runs in my player, right? So the idea is that we want to be able to make everything compatible with one another, because by working in cooperation to a certain extent, it will help promote everybody. Like all the boats will rise with the tide. That type of approach. Does that make sense? Or maybe you could
Oh
think of
yeah.
another analogy of how the standardization can actually be beneficial for everybody.
No,
Or
I like that you brought that up. Like I literally am going to take that recording and play it to any future blockchain and cryptocurrency, like whatever we want to call it, clients or whatever. No, I'm
sure,
serious. Because right now, if you want to publish an NFT, you have to publish on each individual blockchain. There's no
yep,
standard, there's no interoperability. Certain chains don't even have their own standard yet. So I mean, it really, I just looked at a map today, or a chart of, it's still 1998 in terms of internet users with
sure,
blockchain. So I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. Like we're still like very early. So I really can apply what you said to a lot of places. It's so interesting that
right,
volumetric has that. I actually think they might be this whole thing might be a standard for, actually I could see the NFT standards coming out of this, because there's
mm,
no just noise and like this thing and that protocol and
yeah,
this group and that tribe, because it's actually kind of more like, well, which format for the SD card, or like maybe
right,
that's something, I don't know if we're going, I mean, you already opened up some rabbit holes, so let's just go deeper, I guess, right? What is
sure,
it going to be stored on? So you film and it's on an SD card, or it's on maybe a hard drive, or it's on a USB stick.
right,
So then you have I'm filming, I'm taking footage, and then that might need to be plugged into a really powerful workstation that has, actually, believe it or not just for
mm,
miners, GPUs.
right,
And I think that what I'm seeing with AI, and certainly volumetric, and maybe that's something you can touch on, is how much computing and technology. We're talking about multiple cameras. We're talking about the
yeah,
metal. Shout out to Mark Webster, who builds the fixtures.
yeah,
We're talking about a lot of stuff that's going to
yes,
actually require more power, more chips. Maybe you
yeah,
can even talk about NVIDIA a bit, because they're going to be a pretty key player, it seems, in the sort of volumetric world. And what you see now is with Nerf, their free app for
mm-hmm.
creating your own. So yeah, any thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There were many nails sticking out, and I think you whacked all of them. But yeah, that's exactly right, and I think that's an apt analogy. Yeah, there for volumetric, there, yeah, like you said, like there will be hardware specifications, right? So will the software play nicely with the hardware, right? Will it? Because we all know, like if your software is not compatible with the GPU, right? Oh, it only runs on this thing. Or you need this powerful thing, right? Then it becomes useless, right? Or becomes super slow. Uh, and yeah, just being able to have some compatibility would be good. Now, of course, um, it's difficult for any like new industry because it's there's a lot of competition, right? And everybody wants their format to win, or they want their product to become the standard. Screw everybody else, right? So having a lot of that infighting uh, too early on among too many companies could be bad for everybody in general, and then it could turn a lot. It could just create confusion. It can create confusion. It can create. You could just turn people off from it, right? And then nobody wins in the end. It's kind of like everybody's like having this Royal Rumble battle royale in a WWE ring, right? And then nobody wins. Everybody gets knocked out and thrown out, right? Um, so we want to avoid that. So we do. I mean, yes, competition is good, all that stuff, but we do want to have some standards in the beginning, at least, right? And then kind of branch off from there, right? So I think that's the idea, because we don't want to have kind of like an HDVD versus Blu-ray type of war, or something like that, right? So
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. Like we covered a lot of good ground there. I guess we could touch on some tips, but I guess
yeah,
while we're on the VFA,
yeah,
like
of course.
where could people check that out? And I believe you guys have a free tier if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. So you can go to volumetricformat.org/join to learn more. And this month, we actually just introduced a brand new community tier. It's free to join. So if you do your currency conversion, that's $0 US. I believe that's €0, £0, zero everything. It's free, absolutely free. I think you just need to fill out a little form, and you may be wondering, okay, why do I want to join? Well, there are benefits. You get to collaborate with other like-minded individuals in the volumetric space. You can promote your own work, right? And you can get involved in meetings, and you have a voice. You have a voice. Um, about You have a voice, and you can help shape the future of the volumetric industry by getting involved. So that's what we're trying to do, and that applies to those that are both technical and creative minded. So if you're a creator that is more attuned to the video editing side or the creativity side, you are welcome to join. But if you are a computer programmer and you're into AI, machine learning, you're also you're also encouraged to join. If you build hardware and motorized wacky stuff, if you build airplanes, please join. I mean, we the person the person who designed our rigs literally builds airplanes. So we are pretty open, and we know that there are benefits from kind of mashing together different skill sets together, and great things happen when different minds come together. So volumetricformat.org/join to learn more.
Awesome. Yeah, no, really good rundown of what you could get from it. And I mean, yeah, you can't beat free and you get access. And I like what you said about the voice thing. And I think, you guys are actually working on a podcast. So certainly we'll link to whenever that's ready. It'll be there. Obviously, you got the site to check out. I'm sure you guys will update that. But from what I've seen, again, obviously I've met you guys. And so there's a way to see that. But seems like you guys are, keeping the industry in good hands, and like as you pointed out, you have that awareness of like, hey, here's how you could build something really well, or like kind of like knowing when to wait or when to pull the trigger on certain aspects of the industry is really cool to be that early. And anyone listening to this, is also early. Congratulations. So appreciate the invite there. And, it's not some overly saturated thing. It's really grassroots. So, I mean, look, yeah, it's really interesting, frankly. And maybe if you're not a tech nerd, we sound crazy, but maybe you'll be there soon, hopefully, if ETM works. So
Yeah.
final thought, and then I'll get sort of, if you have anything left on your mind, but just kind of shifting gears a little bit. If someone's new and you want to get into an industry like this, okay, maybe you're, just about to hit your career path. Maybe you're at the end of a certain career path and ready to start a new one, or maybe you're retired, but you still are a tech nerd. So you're happy to jump into different things. Like you could be on so many different sides of this. So I guess we could say, sort of generally speaking, about the industry, but also like an event like NAB, which was free, by the way. How would you recommend people sort of break in quotes, to a community like this, an industry like this, a event like this, frankly, since we were discussing NAB before we got in all those rabbit holes? Yeah. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think just having a genuine passion for creativity and technology, that will take you a long way no matter what. Now, specifically for volumetric, everyone has different skill sets and come from different backgrounds. So, no matter what your skill set is, I think there you'll find a home in volumetric for you, right? So if you are a developer and you're into machine learning and AI, we could use your skill sets for improving the quality of the volumetric captures. Or maybe you can help. Yeah, you can help with that effort. If you are a creative, your skills will be needed because we need to figure out new intriguing ways to tell stories that are beyond just watching a two-dimensional video, right? Being able to tell branched narratives or choose your own adventure type of um, situations where the people are volumetrically captured and you're involved in the story, right? So we need a lot of that. If you're into hardware, right, all this stuff needs to be powered by hardware, right? So we will definitely need folks that know how to do that. I mean, we'll need experts on lighting and lenses because like all this volumetric information is captured using hardware, using specially designed cameras. Yeah, so really just check out volumetric and get inspired, and a little bit of inspiration and some skill sets can take you a long way. So basically, whatever your skill set is, you'll find a match for your skill set somewhere in the volumetric industry. So whether you are technical or creative, right? Because I know it can be intimidating, right? Because we're talking about technology, and maybe you are a designer, or maybe you're a writer, or maybe you're not too technically you don't have a lot of technical skills, right? It could be intimidating, but just know that, hey, we're all just making this up as we're going along, or we're all collaborating together, right? Because it becomes a feedback loop, right? Because we need to push the innovation, but we need a reason to push innovation, right? And that reason could be through storytelling, or it could be interactive sports highlights, or it could be for developing a volumetric security system that's mounted on drones, and we need to scan a disaster flood area, right? And we need to see things volumetrically captured, right? So or maybe you're into education and you want to improve interactive learning through volumetric video, right? So as you can see, once you start pulling on the threads here, there is a place for everybody here. So and everybody has skills to bring to the table. So yeah, so that's those are my thoughts on volumetric.
That's a great rundown. I like that it's pretty
Yeah.
inviting for anyone. And I would say, just adding on to that, just sort of the media industry in general, at this point, it's kind of like videos, I wouldn't say is like overly saturated, but there's so much tech, and like it's like a very, like we talked about, a big sort of grind. So I think taking these tools and then fitting them into like whatever it is that you're interested to do, podcasting, certainly video and YouTubing, but volumetrics, this whole other angle. Really quick, I got to play with some of your recommendations. So I filmed an aloe vera plant, and now I have an aloe vera plant that can be put into VR, and it looks really cool as well. Just the panning of volumetric, or of the
Right.
sort of I think it was a Luma AI. So I was
Luma
having a
AI.
blast.
That's right.
I'm having a blast with that, and I'm feeling like I was telling you before we started recording, I'm having a little bit of a renaissance with audio. Like I'm announcing official announcement. I want to record audio sounds and like do cool stuff with that. I think when
Yeah.
you have like when I had the aloe vera plant and the cameras going around it, I was
Right.
thinking I want to hear the birds chirping in this forest right here. And so
Right.
there's this whole thing. You really just have to use the tools, and I think it's like don't try to figure it out
Mm.
before you get there. And I'm like the king of doing that, by the way. Just start doing stuff like with the tools. And then even we were talking
Yeah.
about this episode, like, yeah, I wrote out some questions or whatever, but like now this episode is this episode. And like even the editing of it is like, well, the episode had to be what it was for me to even edit it and know what to do. So it kind of
Right.
just begs or proves the point. Just use the damn tools. That's the ultimate
Yeah,
way to just
that's
do it,
exactly
right?
right. Yeah, because you could describe it, you can analyze it from a distance and think about this and that. But once that's one thing. But then it's another thing to actually get your hands on the tool, start using it. That's when those ideas start to spark, right? You're like, oh wait, what if I right? Because like, just think about your own example, right? When you were scanning the aloe vera plant, you're like, oh wait a second, what if I use this other plant? Or maybe if I scan it during a different time of day, like the lighting is more dramatic and there's more shadows. Or what if there's sound? What if I do the top and the bottom? Or maybe there's another prop next to it, or and then you
Yep.
want to add sound, right? Now that it starts out as like, okay, it's a 3D scan, okay, but then it becomes more than that, because it's not just an object that you scanned. You, by adding sound and being able to move the camera around, right? Because you could rotate around the 3D object, and you catch part of the background too, right? In
Yep.
the little garden you have, you become a storyteller. Congratulations, you accidentally became a storyteller, right? Because
Right.
you're adding no, because you made the conscious decision. Say, hey, I want to add some bird chirping, right? Well, you didn't say I wanted to add a thunderstorm, although you could. You could add some other. You could add some uh, ocean waves, or maybe there's a horror sound effect, or maybe it's a relaxing, meditative Zen garden type of sound effect. It's kind of reminding me of what do you call it? Hyper VR's Hyper RPG's booth, where you can change the time of day, you can change the lighting, right? So again, it kind of goes back to that the ability to quickly make those creative decisions, right? As they pop in your head, right? Before they have a chance to wither and fall off, right? Like you have the ability to make those creative decisions and pursue them like quickly before before it becomes stagnant, right? Or one loses interest, right? So just being able to accelerate that, I mean, it's such a powerful thing. And the fact that you were able to just download an app and scan something, right? It took nothing, right? And you just and it was very clear on like giving you like training wheels on how to scan an object, right? You it even gives you guidelines on of scanning from the top and the middle and the bottom, right, and making sure you reach all the critical points, like as if you're making like a panoramic, right? So yeah, fantastic. I love seeing tools more accessible to the masses, right? I think there's a lot of people out there with great ideas, a lot of creatives, there's probably like a lot of undiscovered like talent, to be honest, and all they need is like to have those tools in their hands, and they're just going to go off and create things that mind-blowing things that you've never seen before, just giving those tools in their hands, and that's what I love to see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the encouragement to use the tools, and like it's even crazier to kind of be maybe building them, right? You're building the train tracks as we're, giving our
Right.
own little model train we just built a shot, to use, I think, the right analogy. So it's a lot of fun, and it also made me think about, to your point, they did make it easy, but there's also a skill to like a proper, I'll use that term loosely, like volumetric shot. You kind of know if it's proper, if it's clean and like not super grainy or whatever. So like I think there's so much more to be done, and it even got me
Yeah.
thinking of like, what would a video production company of the future be? Oh, well, they'd be doing volumetric and drones and probably some normal videography. So that's another thought. Yes, I went to audio, but I was also like, man, this is quite a, like, production's far from gone. And like, even though I was alluding to, yes, the labor's being reduced for certain things, but I'm pretty sure the people doing those jobs will not mind, because now they get to do all this other crazy cool stuff. And yeah, man, really awesome chat. We jumped around a bit, but I think we covered a lot of ground. Any other thoughts that are standing out at this point? Obviously, any of these things we could like throw a dart and say that's our next episode. But yeah, as far as right this moment, yeah, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my final thoughts are, just have fun, stay inspired, and all that, and then and good results will come, I think. So, yeah, that's about it.
Well, thanks for this awesome recap. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening to another episode, and we will see you in the future.
All right, I'll see you in the metaverse. I mean, I'll see you in volumetric. I mean, we'll see each other pretty soon. So, all right, take care.